I'm a woman who went to one of the darkest places in Atlanta, and I still made it out. My parents got divorced, my stepfather and my mother. And at that time, I felt like neither my mom or my dad loved me, because I felt like if you loved me, you'd stay. I was in another world. I was in a whole nother world. I didn't care about anything. I felt free. I felt like I could do anything. I had these friend girls. I was in college. I just felt like Atlanta was my oyster. It was a lot going on. Nobody really ever had to talk with me like, drugs are bad. I just want people to know that I'm worth it. And I know that today. That's the difference, when you know that you're worth something. I'm Mecca Marson, and this is my journey.
I know there's been a lot of speculation about my retirement and what I plan on doing next. And throughout my life, I faced many obstacles. The road has not always been clear. During those tough times, I felt alone. But I prayed and I asked God for strength. In my turmoil, God reached out to me, and it revealed whatever I was going through was a part of my true destiny. It was at that moment I made a decision to stop getting in the way of God's plans, because my true story of my destination was my journey.
Mecca Marson was once a lost soul who roamed the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. After years of finding comfort through a life of drug addiction, she has decided to pick herself up and find her place in society.
What makes my story unique, I think, and I've heard this before, is people say that you don't ever see no black girls on heroin, And honestly, I haven't seen that many. I'm a woman who went to one of the darkest places in Atlanta, and I still made it out. I have all my teeth, So I'm pretty proud about that, I felt like somewhere along the way, somebody told me that I wasn't anything, or made me feel like I wasn't anything, and I believed it. And I've kept up with the same lie for 37 years. And I'm starting not to believe that lie anymore, but I would have told my young self that I'm worth every college credit. I'm worth every great job. I'm worth every boyfriend that leads me to a husband, because I've never believed those things my whole life. A little bit about Mecca growing up would be growing up right outside of Philadelphia. I lived in Marson, which is about 10 minutes outside. Too small to be a city, too big to be a town. I stayed with my mom. She was a single mother. And my father was just absent in my life. I didn't really know where he was. I remember I used to go visit him on trips when he was in prison. Well, I found out later he was in prison. But I didn't really know who he was. I knew of him, I just didn't know him as a father. My mom always cried a lot about custody things, and it was hard watching her go through that, because I really cared for my mom. But I started noticing I had a lot of uncles. I always had a lot of uncles, they were always around to take care of my mom and me and anything that we needed. And I think that's something later on I kind of picked up after I got into adulthood and started needing things as my addiction became greater and greater. The uncles stopped though when I became, I think, about 9 or 10, and I got a stepdad and I got some brothers. He came into the marriage with a son, and so we became stepbrother and sister, and they had a child. So I was the oldest in the family. Not to mention I had an older brother who was by my real father, which I didn't really see him that much until I got a little bit older. So I had like all these little different lives all over the place, and I developed at a young age having a double life. I acted one way in my household as a big sister and a good student, and then on the weekends when I would go see my real father's family, that's when I was, kind of smoke and drink a little bit, because they were in the city, and that was like what I had to do to kind of be accepted.
Living between two households, Mecca was being exposed to two different worlds.
The environments in my household, two totally separate things, two very different apples and oranges, both fruit, but apples and oranges. My mom was an upstanding citizen. She paid her taxes. She had a job and a husband. She sold art. Stepfather was an engineer. My real father's side, everybody had gone to prison. Addiction was all through his side of the family, but it was outward. Either you smoked weed or you drank, you popped pills, or whichever. My dad never really kept a job. He was kicked out of the Army. So it almost seemed like when I was at home with my mother, I had this goody two-shoe kind of Cosby Show family going on. It was an intermixed family. And then when I would go see my father and his side of the family, which a lot of times he was absent. But when he did see me, it wasn't like a great reunion. It was almost as if I was some sort of ghost. I noticed things about him and how he acted when I was around about 11 or 12. I would just be that type where he would make promises about doing things. And as cliche as it sounds, I would, look out the window, be waiting on him, things like that, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. It really hurt. And I developed at a young age that I didn't want to, I didn't invest trust in men because that was where I learned it from. I learned it from him. Later on, I got a job after high school. My parents got divorced, my stepfather and my mother. And at that time, I felt like neither my mom or my dad loved me because I felt like if you loved me, you'd stay. I'm a senior in high school. Things are kind of coming together for me as a young adult. And so I became angry. And at that point, I kind of just, it was whatever I wanted to do. So I started experimenting with other drugs to get higher. It started off with ecstasy. So I went from weed and drinking and then ecstasy pills, downers to come down and Xanax. And by time, actually when my mother and father divorced, my mother and stepfather, when they divorced, my mom moved to Atlanta. And that's how I got here. So my mom coaxed me to come down because, she convinced me that nobody can love me like she can, which nobody could. But at the same time, I think the way that I felt about myself and the way I was kind of on edge, I really probably shouldn't have came to Atlanta. I mean, it was a party scene when I first moved here, which was in '99. I felt free. I felt like I could do anything. I had these friend girls. I was in college. I just felt like Atlanta was my oyster. It was a lot going on. After hours parties. I mean, I just never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like that because I'm just coming from Philadelphia at 17. So by the time I make it here at 18, I'm just like, whoa. So I started off at Atlanta Institute, and then I dropped out after it was only a few semesters, because at the time, just being around other females that had these jobs, they were waitressing and cocktailing, things like that, getting to know them and being close with them. I mean, it was Wednesday through Sunday. That was what we did. We partied, but we lived together probably for about 3 years.
Being exposed to this lifestyle, Mecca's curiosity only grew more.
I guess trying new drugs at the time, it was part feeling like I was invincible, and part that nobody really ever, had the talk with me like, drugs are bad, I mean, not besides the little dare thing that you did back in like 4th grade, But nobody ever was like, hey, listen, this is what happens,
Mecca was so consumed by the lifestyle of her drug addiction that even when she looked for a way out, she felt she was being pulled right back in.
At the time, it's almost like a prison in your mind. You don't want to do it, but you do it because you don't feel like you can live without it. And then once I got to the part of physical addiction, it was almost like I have to have this. This is not a request. This is like do or die. This is like I have to have this thing.
But when it seemed impossible, Mecca found redemption through her nights of incarceration.
Many times in jail. Now, those were the times where I would pray and I'd say, God, please just let me get it right this time. Let me get it right this time. Let me get out and be focused on what I need to do to stay straight. And I think going to jail, that is the most clarifying, because I went through detox probably about, I had a 17 felony conviction, so I probably went through detox probably about 12 times for like 10 or 15 days. You just, all the drugs and the withdrawal, and you're pumping you full of medication and things like that. It's awful. I literally felt like I was looking at myself be sick. That was the part I wasn't looking forward to in intake. I knew it was coming. But when you're on the street and you're doing heroin and cocaine, you don't think about those things. Because again, I'm on a cloud. I feel invincible. I can do anything. I'm not scared of anybody. And actually, the person I became on drugs was like my alter ego. Now I have such compassion. I feel a compassion for people. I want to help. I'm looking for solutions. That wasn't me on drugs. That was not me. I'm looking to damage on drugs. When I got out, I was put in a program. It was an outpatient program. It's like through the court system. And it's actually probably one of the best things that's happened to me. Only because it's taught me how to manage life. You go to work, you go to sleep at a reasonable time, you eat dinner, you make dinner. I didn't really know those things because when I started my addiction, I was 17, 18, so I didn't really know too much about all that.
Still fighting the battle for a sober life, Mecca is taking it one day at a time, learning more about herself.
I'm smiling because I'm aware now, honestly, of a few things. One would be my emotions. My emotions are, I'm a bottler. If I get hurt about something, it's almost necessary for me to share about how I feel to people. And I recommend that for anybody that's on drugs or not on drugs. It's almost necessary for me. I can't bottle emotions because I'm looking for a salve to ease the pain. I know that I can't turn to drugs. I have a network that is out of this world. I keep in close contact with my mentors and my family. I talk to my family, the select ones that still support me 100%. My grandmother, she supports me still. My brother, my older brother. Trying to work back a relationship with my father, that's kind of shaky a little bit. It's just that my eyes are more open to me as a growing, I don't know if I should say human being or being spiritual, because I get satisfaction these days from knowing just how far I've come. For someone that doesn't know me, I would tell them that I'm a strong woman who has been through a great ordeal of upsets in my life, but I'm coming back. Wow. Again, that I'm worth it, I just want people to know that I'm worth it. And I know that today. That's the difference, when you know that you're worth something. I think that anybody who is using drugs has to know that until you truly accept that you have an issue and a problem and that you're willing to do something about it, whether it be 12-step meetings, whether it be spiritual, whether it be mentors or modeling after someone that you see doing great and that used to be in the same situation as you and is doing better now, pick one and run with it. Unfortunately, those who are using who haven't come to that knowledge yet will still suffer, and it's a shame. But anybody who's wanting to stop, it can be done. It can be done. And the appreciation for life is far greater than the reward you get from drugs.
My grandmother used to always tell us as kids, like, whatever you want to do, you have to assume what you want to do. Growing up was actually incredible. And if I was asked that question 1,000,000 times, I'd feel the same way every time I get ready to answer that question. When I was a kid, I was a celebrity in the 7th grade because of basketball. When I had Cookie, my whole life just changed. When she was like 2 years old, she was diagnosed with a malignant tumor on her kidney. And so I started acquiring a different knowledge, how you can, change or reverse a condition from just basically changing your diet. Then boom, everything started to change, but it didn't start to change until I started changing. Hi, I'm Ralph Malone, and this is my journey.
Ralph Malone is like many who faced a lifetime full of adversities. However, because of his strong determination, at a young age, Ralph had to learn that it's not how the cards are dealt, but how you play them that makes all the difference.
My grandmother used to always tell us as kids, like, whatever you want to do, you have to assume what you want to do. Or whatever you want to become, you have to assume it. And I can hear a voice in my head right now saying, son, you got to assume what you want to do. You got to assume it, baby. You got to assume it. But when you're a kid, you don't really know what that means. Like, assume it. But as I began to grow and get older, playing sports was a part of my life. Through junior high school, all the way up into high school. McDonald's All-American. So that's what I thought it was gonna be for my life, was basketball. Growing up was actually incredible. And if I was asked that question 1,000,000 times, I'd feel the same way every time I get ready to answer that question, because when I was a kid, I was a celebrity in the 7th grade because of basketball. And I have been playing since I was 5, so just instant celebrity came with basketball as a kid. So my neighbor, one thing led to another. First girl I was with had a kid with her, which he's grown now, but yeah, that was my first kid, my son. And then my next kid was my daughter, Cookie, Jasmine. Wow. I think when I had Cookie, my whole life just changed. I don't know if it was my grandmother praying for so long for me, but when I had Cookie, I went through this whole metamorphosis. When she was like 2 years old, she was diagnosed with a malignant tumor on her kidney. You go from a happy, playful, joyful kid to being diagnosed with a tumor on her kidney. But at the time, I was in the music. Music, streets go hand in hand. You looking for a way to clean your cash up? Go learn how to rap. Well, I had actually gotten really good by the time my daughter was diagnosed with the tumor on her kidney. And here in Atlanta, I had like the #2 record at radio with a song like with Twista, Call You With That. And the record had got really, really big. So Def Jam was like, who is this Malone character taking up our slot from, Jay-Z? Because at the time it was Outkast, Miss Jackson, me with the You With That record featuring Twista, and then Jay-Z, Big Pimpin'. And Def Jam wanted to know, how are you getting this? How is this record, who is this kid? So at that point, Def Jam just started really following me. And the record began to build and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually more companies began to come to the table. Well, at this time, while I'm entertaining all of this, my daughter gets diagnosed with a tumor on her kidney. And they had to take one of the kidneys out. I remember doing BET's Teen Summit at Phillips Arena with the radio station here and having to leave the summit to go to the hospital because they were actually waiting for the test to come in. And as soon as I walked in, my baby had all these IVs in her. But she's a kid, and kids, they don't know pain. She jumped up immediately when I walked through the door. She was like, my daddy's here. So she was ready to play. But the doctor walked in right behind me. And her mom at the time was a nurse. She was like, well, they want to talk to you. And he was like, well, we did find a tumor on her kidney the size of a tomato, and said that they would have to remove one of her kidneys. And to hear that was like, what? You at the peak of your music career, about to get the attention to go into business with a record company, which every artist is aspiring to do, to go into business with them, not to just get a record deal, because I had a company. So I wanted to get a co-venture deal to go into business with them. I had to make a decision right then and there. Either I'm gonna go get the riches, the fame, and leave her mother and her to carry that burden by themselves and eventually just check in on them every now and then, or I'm just gonna have to let my next dream go. Every man, I don't care who he is, he loves his daughter. When a man has a daughter, you change. We act a certain way with boys because we always want to see that part of us through our son. But a daughter, you're never gonna be the same. And I was close to my baby. So I turned the deal down and moved in the hospital. Little did I know it would be for the next 6 years. 3 full living, 3 follow-ups. You wanna talk about something that was hard? My baby went from a healthy, normal baby to losing her hair, her eyebrows, because they had to treat her like a chemo patient. So she lost all of her hair, all of her eyebrows. At one point in time, she was probably 25, 30 pounds, maybe. But she was very, very small. And there wasn't no for sure sign that she was gonna make it, because we know what chemo does to, people. That was tough, man. But it never killed her spirit. She was always happy, always playing, always smiling and telling me something about when she would, the one thing that my daughter would always say is when she would see somebody come in the room with long hair, she would say, because at that time she started talking, she would say, my hair is gonna be long like that one day, isn't it, Daddy? Even now, I can just still remember that, like yesterday. That was painful, real painful. And just to see how tough and how resilient she was, little did I know it was working on me more than it was her. And by this time I had given up the streets. I had started fasting, because I wanted to know, why was this happening to my child as opposed to, other kids? Was it because of my activity in the streets, or I hadn't killed anybody, but I didn't know why it was happening to me. So I started fasting. And I did my first 40-day fast. The first 10 days, I didn't drink nor eat anything. And then eventually after the first 10 days, I started just all liquid. And at this time, I didn't have any knowledge about fasting or anything. No knowledge, absolutely. I was totally ignorant because I broke out with a staph infection really, really bad. And I mean, it was all over my face. It was on my face, going down my back. And, you know, normally when you're fasting like that, you don't really have any knowledge. You're supposed to clean your body before you go into a long fast like that because the waste is trying to get outside the body. So I went into this health food store, and this lady, she eventually looked at me and said, "I know what you're doing." So she gave me this stuff and told me to go soak in it, and it cleared it up. But that was many, many moons ago when I first started out with just learning about health and learning about the body and how long it could actually go without food. So after I came down, I probably came down about maybe a week. I went right back up again. And the next time I went 80 days, trying to figure out, I'm fasting for my daughter. I'm trying to figure out what is actually going on. And at this time, I'm reading the Bible from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. I did this for the entire 3 years. I would read the Bible from the time I woke up, from the time I went to bed. I would study. I did a lot of reading. And like I said, my daughter's mom was a nurse, so she had a lot of health books. And I started studying those books. Unbeknownst to her, she had no idea that I was reading those books and studying. And so I started acquiring a different knowledge about health and eating and how you can, change or reverse a condition from just basically, changing your diet. But it took many, many more years of learning more things and finding more people that had far more knowledge on the subject. And I would go into these different seminars just to learn and listen and learn as much information as I could. But also at the same time, I'm still fasting. I'm still trying to find why is my daughter going through this situation without God giving me an answer. Then boom, everything started to change. Everything started to change, but it didn't start to change until I started changing.
On the next, The Journey with LaMarr Woodley.
We go into the hospital to have some removed, only to know that the foods that we're eating was the reason we were there. So I started giving her different foods. I started giving her things that were more alkaline. I wanted to know more information than anybody because information is a commodity. I just wanted to know more than everybody else.